Okay, guys, welcome. Today we're going to talk about how to find the slope of a linear function. Okay. Um, Now, when you're looking at a straight line on a graph, you can see that it's either going to be increasing or decreasing. And you can look at increases and decreases in both of your x and your y values, right? So one way that we can classify this change is what's called slope, right? And another way that you can sort of think of slope is sort of how steep the line is. Right. And the way that we sort of classify this is the rise over the run, which is your change in your y values over the change in x values. Right. And that's, of course, going to lead us to the formula where if you're given 2 points, x1 and y1, and x2, y2, then you can find the slope between those points by finding y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Right? Now, one thing that you would need to keep in mind is that if x2 and x2 are the same, that's going to cause your denominator to be 0. All right. Now, if your denominator is 0, we say that that slope is undefined. All right. However, if you have a horizontal line, that means that your y coordinates are the same and you would get 0 on the top, but that's okay. And that's just 0, right? So if you have a horizontal line, that would be 0. All right, so we're going to do a couple of examples of that. Okay, so we're going to find the slope, which again is given by the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 for a bunch of these examples. Okay, so in part A, we have 4, 2, and 1, negative 2. Okay, so I think it helps at least at first. We'll say that this is x1, y1, and we'll say that this is x2, y2, and we're just going to plug everything in. So we get a negative 2 minus 2 over a 1 minus 4. So we get a negative 4 over negative 3, which of course we could just simplify as 4 over 3. Okay, part B, we have negative 5 comma 2 and negative 2, negative 1. Okay, so if we plug this in, we have a negative 1 minus 2 over a negative 2 minus a negative 5, right? So be careful with your negatives here. So of course that was a minus and negative, so we could change it to positive, and here we'll get a negative 3 over positive 3, so we can reduce that to a negative 1. Okay, part C, we have a 2, negative 4, and 4 comma 1. So we can call this x1, y1, and this one x2, y2. So then that's going to give us a 1 minus negative 4 over a 4 minus 2. So we're going to get a 5 over 2. Okay, and then last but not least, part D, we have negative 1, negative 3, and negative 2, negative 5. And if we plug this in, we'll get a negative 5 minus negative 3 over a negative 2 minus a negative 1. So here we get minus and negative in both cases. So we're going to get a negative 2 over a negative 1, which we can write as just positive 2. All right, so those are some examples of finding the slope. Okay, now we mentioned earlier before that slope sort of measures the level of steepness of a line, right? Now, if your slope is positive, that means that your graph is increasing, right? If your slope is negative, that means that it's decreasing, right? And of course, if your slope is 0, that means that you have a constant function. And of course, this is just a horizontal line. Okay. Now the slope doesn't exist, or it's undefined for a vertical line But of course, we know that the vertical line is not a graph of a function. All right, so you can look in the textbook and you can see sort of several examples of this. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll find a couple more slopes, and then we'll use that to say whether the line is rising or falling, or you can say increasing and decreasing. Okay, so part A, we have 1, 2, and -2, -7. So if we plug this in, we got a -7 minus 2, or a -2 minus 1. So we'll get a -9 over -3. So this is a +3. So that means that the graph is increasing. Okay, part B, we have a 1, 0, and a 3, -2. Okay, so if we plug this in, we got a -2 minus 0 over 3 minus 1. So we get -2 over +2, which is a -1. So this is decreasing. Okay, part C, we have a -1, -3, and 0, 1. So if we plug this in, we're going to get a 1 minus a -3 over a 0 minus -1. So we're going to get 4 over 1, which is just 4. So again, we're increasing. Okay, for part D, we have -1, -4, and 3, -4. So we got -4 minus a -4 over a 3 minus a -1. So plus negative here will become, or sorry, minus a negative will become positive. So we're going to get a 0 over 4. Same thing happens here. And this is just 0, right? So this is neither increasing or decreasing. This, of course, is constant. Okay, finally, part E, we have 2, 0, and 4, -1. Okay, so if we plug this in, we'll get a -1 minus 0 over 4 minus 2. So we get a -1 over +2. So since this is negative, this is a decreasing. Okay. So that concludes this video on slope. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.